I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we are talking to Ramona Hammel about her intriguing book series called Rate. They transport readers into the late 19th century following the life of Millie, a hardworking farmer in Michigan who dreams of passing his passion for farming onto a son. As Millie reflects on his journey from Canada and the events that shaped his life, he eagerly awaits the birth of his second child, hoping for a son to carry on the family name. The series explores the themes of family dynamics, legacy, and the joys and challenges of life on the farm. Millie embarks on a new chapter with the birth of his son, Rate. We are delighted to have Ramona join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the folks at Good River Print and Media for helping us put her in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like her by subscribing to our channel. Ramona, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Oh,
I
my
appreciate it.
pleasure. My pleasure. Now, you and I were chatting before we began, and this story
Mhm.
about Rate is based, at least in part, on your family, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
It
tell
starts
us
actually with my great grandparents,
your great
great
grand.
great grandparents. I'm sorry.
Okay.
hmm
Let's give the folks at
So
home
yeah.
the big picture. Tell them what the series is about. I gave them a little bit of a hint, but you probably can fill in the blanks a lot better than I can.
hmm what it is, there's kind of three generations here. There's Horatio and his wife, Lavina, and they are very well off in Michigan. My great great grandpa was very well known, and he was the businessman. He sold horses, he sold cows, he did real estate. He actually opened his own bank at one time because he had enough money to do that. They moved around a lot. And so the thing is, he came from Canada and thinking that he would start this new life in Michigan and get going. And so, of course, it's important to carry on the Setterington name. So
Mhm.
he had two sons. He and his wife had a lot of daughters, but many of them died as young children. And so they only had one who survived. And for some reason, I think that's why then they got where they liked the daughter better than the males, even though they wanted the name carried on. So anyway, so his son then Milford gets married, and of course he has the daughter Blanche, but then he wants a son to carry on the Setterington name. And again, but I don't know what it is. They cater to the girl more than they do the boy. They are really strict with Ralph. And his wife did not want a boy at all. She didn't want children at all, but she ended up having a boy. And so the thing is, so now you got the three generations, and now that's why Milford is excited. He's got the boy to carry on the family name. He has the boy now to help him with the farming and the chores and to do that. But the girl, like I said, they really catered to her and they spoiled her quite a bit. So
Yeah.
but it just shows what life was like on the fam out in a rural area of Michigan. It's actually Elsie, Michigan, kind of around Lansing area.
Mhm.
And then from there, they ended up, because of Blanche, the daughter, they ended up moving actually to the city for a while, and then moved back to the farm because he really did like the farm.
Mhm.
So, but that's kind of the gist of it. It's just showing the family life of, like, say, rural area, small town,
Mm.
Michigan.
Yeah. Well, life on a farm in Michigan in the late 18th century has to be kind of
Mhm.
harsh. I mean, I've been in Michigan. The climate
Oh
is
yeah,
isn't exactly
yes.
balmy, you know. So
Good point. So yeah, so that's kind of the thing. And that's what was nice. There was a lot of stories about how it was to raise the children on the farm and country life. To Like you said, what the other farmers, how you had to get together with them. It was because that was a nice thing. They were a lot of small farms, and farmers really helped each other a lot. They
Mm.
helped with the threshing. They helped with even breeding the animals. They harvest time, just building barns, building houses. You helped each other out quite a bit. It wasn't like you were just, oh, I can do this all myself. So they really depended on a lot of other farmers for things.
How did you learn about the stories that the books are based upon? From your family?
Yes, actually, what it was, my mom was very interested. Of course, she was fourth generation on the farm. She loved the farm and she loved family. She asked a lot of my grandparents about a lot of the stories. She talked with many other relatives, and she would write the things down and collect stories. I remember even myself as a young child when we would go visit my grandpa, Ray or Ralph Satterington. Um,
Mhm.
he would tell stories. And so my mom would just take notes. And then what happened was my brother was one of those that said, maybe you could kind of make this into a story somehow because of all
Mm.
these just interesting stories that my family had.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Have you envisioned this as a TV series on Netflix or Prime or something like that, or maybe even a collection of movies?
Yes, I have. Because the thing is, there's so many little interesting stories that it
Mm.
would be very easy to have like a television series, or because there's the four different books to have like a movie series. Especially because I look back and I know my mom and I used to talk about this, about like how the Waltons,
Mhm.
Spencer's Mountain, Earl Hammer Jr. He started out with that, and then it became the series The Waltons. Same way with Little House on the Prairie, how that had
Mhm.
just so many short little stories, and they were just able to make a lot of television series. And so that's how this like I say, there's just the four books right now, but there's many little interesting tidbits in there that just show family life and what it was like.
Absolutely. And if you're talking about Little House on the Prairie and the Waltons, that's,
Mhm.
decades ago now. I think it's due that we
Yes.
have an updated series of life on the farm, you know?
Oh, true, true. That's true.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a little bit different, but and I think that there are the similarities because actually, so Lavina and Horatio Sutterington, they were very domineering, especially Lavina.
Mhm.
Um, they were the you will do what I say. And so there is this conflict because the one son, Milford's brother, or Millie as he's called, his brother rejected the parents. He did not want to follow their rules or what they said, but Milford always did. And that was part of the problem that his wife then, Elmina or Miney, would have. She was like, why can't you stand up to your parents? Why do
Mhm.
you always do what they say? And he's like, oh, but I have to. And I don't know why he did, but he just felt he always had to do what they wanted. And so then that was part of the reason why he was really how strict with his son, his own son, Ralph. And he was like, you will do exactly what I do because I always did what my parents told me to do.
Mhm. Are
So
the names
it's
you
just
use
kind of
in the book?
interesting.
I'm sorry? I think are the
Go
names you
ahead.
use
Yeah.
in the book the real life names of your family members?
Actually, they are.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting because it's Horatio Sederington,
Mhm.
and then what happened was I don't know how he got the nickname Rate. So
Mhm.
then there was his son Milford or Millie Sederington, and then when they named his son Ralph Sederington, he goes, "I'm going to honor my dad." And I will call him Rate, like my
Right.
dad was called. And so that's how my mom came up with the title Rate for the
Gotcha.
first book.
Gotcha. And I guess Horatio was
Mhm.
Horatio, so that's how it became rate.
Yes,
Or
probably.
possibly,
Yes.
possibly, yeah. I was
Yep.
gonna say you guys have the strangest
Mhm.
nicknames and
Yep.
stuff, you know. I
Well,
mean, they're
and I know it
great.
kind of gets confusing because especially, well, especially so what it is so here's Horatio Sederington, and then here's Milford Horatio Sederington, and then
Right.
here's Ralph Horatio Sederington, and then he goes on and has Keith Horatio Sederington. So the name Horatio kind of got passed on for a while.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So your mom helped you
Mhm.
work on the series a little bit? I know she told you the stories, but she also named
She's
it.
she's she's the one who came up. She did most of the writing. What she would do is sometimes then come to me, and if I was confused about something or I'm going, well, that doesn't quite make sense, we would work on it and change it. So I was kind of the one who did more of the editing. She
Mhm.
actually had written these books back in probably was it 1990s and tried to
Mhm.
get them published, but wasn't able to. And
Mhm.
so then when she turned 90 years old, or I guess she was 92. Anyway, it was one of these. I thought, what can I do for my mom? She's how old? How do you honor your mother? So
Mm.
decided to see if I could get them published, and I did. And so she
Wonderful.
was very, very excited that, and it ended up she got to see, especially the first book. I didn't have all the books done, but she got to see the first book rate published before she died, because that was
Wonderful.
her birthday present, and she died like 2 months later.
Yeah.
So it was quite an honor for her.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful you were able to share that with her before her passing. I mean, she lived to be at ripe old
Yes,
age. Thank God for that. And it
right,
sounds like
right.
she was sharp as a tack right until the end, from what you
Oh
described
yes,
too. Yeah.
yes, she was. Yep.
Yeah.
She was one that she did have to have 24-hour care, and was able to still live at home. My oldest sister was able to take care of her. She was a retired nurse, and what was really kind of nice too, she ended up in the hospital before a couple weeks before she died. And anyway, and she's like, I'm 94 years old and I've got my first book published. So she was pretty excited about that.
That's
So, like I
wonderful.
said, that was, and then my sister reread the book to her too. Because, like I said, there were some changes that we did make,
Right.
just so that it would make a little more sense to the public.
That's exciting. I mean, it's very nice that you had that memory with your mother, that she's part of the series. It's like the book,
Yes.
she lives on in the books now, which is great. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Very true.
Do you still live on a farm?
I still live on a farm too. It's kind of fun. My husband and I, he is fourth generation on his farm, and so we are on the family farm here in Hudson.
Mm.
My mom actually went from living in Elsie on the farm to living with her husband, my dad. He was fourth generation on their family farm, so it's kind of neat how we've all kind of just stayed in this, family farm thing. It's been in the family for generations. So
Yeah.
that's why, like I say, that a lot of these stories, it's just fun to relate to because you just are used to being on the farm
Eh,
and
Yeah.
doing these things.
Yeah. And it's a part of Americana that is slipping away. I mean,
Yes,
thank goodness
that is very
you did
true.
it. I don't know, is your kids going to do it, or are other family members going to do it? I mean,
That's a good
everybody
question.
loves these family farms, but not everybody wants to get up at five
Yeah,
in the morning and take care of the animals, right?
exactly. That is so true. And and that's the thing, I guess, what I've found very nice about it. There's so much, like you said, slipping away that kids aren't learning about anymore. I mean, it's just, and that's what I liked about the books. They will tell about the horse and buggy, or what you had to do to take care of horses, or what you had to do to actually to live, like in the wintertime. I mean, each farmer, you usually had your own orchard, you had your own food, and it
Hmm.
tells how they would, well, butcher a cow and hang it, or the pig, how they would um, slaughter it to get food. Because there was, for a while, my one Milford actually owned a meat market in Elsie, and so my mom was able to tell just what you had to do to the pig to get it, so you could sell it.
Hmm.
Or just like to take care of apples for the winter, to bury them in the ground, cover them with straw, and then horse manure. Who would think of doing that today? You'd get grossed out, right? But
Right.
that's what they had to do, and that's what I like about it shows, or just how they made sausage, just different things like that, that you had to do in order to preserve uh,
Yeah.
the food to get through the winter time.
Exactly. A lot of canning, a lot
Or,
of harvesting in the
oh
fall.
my gosh,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Smoking
Uh,
of the meats and so
you know,
forth.
and Oh, exactly. Well, even when you think about it, cooking on the wood stove, because that was one of the jobs my grandpa had as a young boy.
Hmm.
He had to go collect the wood to bring in to put into the wood stove. Well, now think of that, in the summer, the women are still cooking on wood stoves in
Right.
a hot kitchen,
Right.
and you're cooking 3 meals a day. Not like
Right.
today where you just go, oh, let's go to McDonald's, or, wherever, get something to eat. It's like, no, there was 3 meals a day for these farmers. And you ate, when you got up in the morning, like 5 o'clock, when you ate at 12 o'clock, you ate 6 o'clock, and then,
Yeah.
it was always very rigid on time when you ate.
Well,
So,
when you're doing farming, you better have a good meal, right? Because you're
oh,
working hard.
absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah. And then there's also the things about the hazards on the farm. Like the one time when my um, grandpa jumped out of the haymow, but landed on a pitchfork, and the
Ooh,
pitchfork went through his foot.
lucky it was only
And
his
then
foot.
he's crawling. Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's crawling back to the house for his mom. But they didn't have the doctoring like we have now. And it tells like how they put salt pork with pepper on it and wrapped it on his foot. And that's how they, to get, so it wouldn't get infected. I mean,
Right.
can you imagine putting salt pork on your foot now?
Good
Things
God.
like that.
I
Yeah.
know. I know. It's
Or there was a
amazing.
time,
Go ahead.
yeah, or in time that he got kicked by a horse. And he actually ended up missing so much school that he had to repeat. I think it was seventh grade. He had to repeat because he'd gotten kicked, and the trouble was it split his down to the shin. And the doctor would come, but it just tells how they had to, I mean, burn the flesh off and put this stuff on it to heal it, and and then do it again because they didn't have the drugs like we have now
Yeah.
either. The
Yeah.
antibiotics and that. So I mean, just little stories like that, you go, wow, are we
Yeah.
thankful for how we live today versus what they went through.
Well, something's gained and something's lost, right?
True.
Yeah.
That's true.
Because we have our urgent care centers today and our antibiotics, and like you said, the McDonald's or the Cracker
Oh,
Barrel
exactly.
down the street. But you
Mm-hmm.
don't have that bonding of the mealtime together where all the workers on the farm
Oh,
get together to have their lunch. And,
exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
tell me about
Well,
your,
and that
go
was the
ahead.
thing. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, because I was just thinking, oh, I was just thinking, like, yes, like you said, family mealtime. And then, well, then now you're thrashing and you have 20 extra men that are
Mm,
over there. And so, like, some of the women would come over and they're all cooking. I mean, and when you think about it, they're slaughtering chickens so that they can have chickens. They're peeling potatoes. I mean, they've just got all this work to do to feed these hungry men because those men, it's not like today, okay, I'm sitting in the air conditioned office,
yeah.
doing something. It's like, no, they're out there working and sweating. So yeah. Or the
Yeah.
barn raisings that they had where they would get together. Yeah, big difference on today.
And that's a huge community thing as well. I mean, I live in a rural area here in
Yes.
Connecticut on like 10 acres, and I'm a
Okay.
city boy.
Oh, nice.
Uh, so my neighbors have
Yeah.
to help me from time to time with, my
Oh,
field or my waterfront or whatever it is, because I
right.
don't know. But it is that
Mm-hmm.
sense of community of neighbor helping neighbor. They see you're in a
Yes.
jam, they come over with a tool. And you talked about barn raising.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was an event where
Oh,
everybody in
yeah.
the community would come by and help build this family a
Yes.
barn that weekend, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Because I know my grandpa, the time he finally got to go see one for the first time, where his sister's like, "Oh, what's the big deal?" And he's like, just how they tell how they would hew these big logs, and then pull them up, and the horses and the men, just what it would take, kind of along the line. I mean, some people would think, "Oh, yeah, Amish do it that way today," which they tend to do. So if you're familiar with Amish, this will make a little more sense. But
Right.
like I say, or even like the roads that they had to drive on to even, well, and that was part of the thing, because your horse and buggy is the only
Yeah.
way to get anywhere. And think about it, after it's rain and it's how muddy or snow, and then they
Right.
had their cutters with the horses, but you got to make sure the horse doesn't get overheated. You got to, like, there were certain horses that you had to make sure the hair around their hooves was trimmed so that otherwise it would cause problems. So, and there was a lot to taking care of the animals too that you had
Yeah.
that were your work, and then you had your work horses versus the horses that pulled the buggies, or the horses just for joy, whatever. So
Right.
yeah, like I say, a lot of different things that they had to do.
Yeah. You needed to be physically strong, you know, because
Oh
they didn't
yes,
have the tools,
yeah,
they didn't have the machine. You weren't doing it with your John
no,
Deere, you know. You were doing
that's
it,
true, very true. Or
exactly. You're
or
doing
just like, even like just even like just cutting the hay for the horses, and things you don't think about. Oh, all the people in town had horses too, so
right.
they had their carriage houses, but they needed hay. So a lot of the farmers, you grew a lot of hay because you sold it to the people in the towns or cities, because they needed it too. And then when you think about it too, even in the cities back then, they were mostly dirt roads there, and so here's these buggies, just making these ruts in these roads, and
Right.
how rough they could get, or now you had to go to town and it doesn't matter if it's raining or snowing, you got to get there
Yeah.
and you're in your buggy.
Yeah.
And so they're, I forget they call them like horsehide blankets.
Mhm.
That was the thing too. You used every animal, or like the when you a horse got past its prime or whatever, and you used the skin to build blankets or muffs or coats with the horses
Yeah.
hides, which we wouldn't think of doing today either.
Right.
So
But it's survival. I mean, it was protecting from the
it
elements.
really
It
was.
was, reusing
Yes,
resources and, not letting
yes,
anything go to waste.
correct. Yep.
Tell me
And
about
I do
your
remember
farm.
that because that was part of
Go ahead. I'm
my
sorry.
farm. It's a 6 acre farm, and like I said, it was belonged to my husband's let's see, great grandpa, and of course got passed on to grandpa, got passed on to to dad, and then to now Randy now. So that's pretty cool. There was a little bit more land that went with it, but it got divided up because there were other brothers and sisters, and so
Yeah.
actually it's our relatives that live next to us, and then there's an aunt that lives next to them. So that's kind of nice too. So you got family members close by,
And what do you raise on your farm?
and then actually ours is in what they call a CRP program.
Mhm.
It's a government program where they have us not raise crops.
Mhm.
We have grasses or trees or wetland. We
Mhm.
have a pond that will attract, say, like ducks, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. More of a wildlife refuge, I guess. So we
Gotcha.
get a lot of deer and ducks and turkeys and things like that.
Interesting. Interesting. Do you
So like I
miss,
say, yeah,
do you
no
grew up
crop
on a
farming.
farm though, an actual working farm, right?
I did. I
Yeah.
did. Yes.
So do you miss that
Oh
life
yeah,
of
we
like,
milked the cows. We had the chickens and the pigs. I can't say I really miss it because it's a lot of work. I mean,
yeah,
living in the city is a lot easier, and it's kind of more,
yeah,
a lot of things to do there. Where that was the thing when you're on the farm, and that was you are just there seems like there's always something to do, but it's good, clean, hard work, and you go, wow, look. Well, that's the thing. We do have our own fruit trees, our own vegetables. We have a huge garden. We can. I mean,
mhm,
and that's just something that got passed on from grandma to my mom to me and that kind of thing. That that's what you do. And I know my husband's always laughing. He goes, "Well, we're going to be the ones with the food, when the others don't have it, because like I say, we're just self sufficient for the most part
yeah,
because
yeah.
we
Well,
could
that
grow
was
our
kind
own."
of what drove us to our rural area of Connecticut was
Oh
COVID
yeah,
struck.
yeah,
And my wife was
yes,
always like, I want to be self-sufficient if, society breaks down more than
yes.
it is. And we haven't cultivated our
Hmm.
land yet, really, other one. We've got some fruit trees and we've got some vegetables and
Oh,
we
okay,
want
good.
we want to get some
Yeah.
animals, things like that. But
Hmm. Yep.
we're going to name the farm Lazy Girl Farm because she likes to sleep
Oh,
late.
there you go.
And
Nice. I like it. That's
I'll
good.
be able the one up
Yes.
early feeding the cows or the pigs or
Probably. Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Well,
Well,
this
and
is,
well,
what's
that's
that?
go ahead.
No, you
And
go
well,
ahead.
that's the other thing. I know. Oh, that's the other thing. I remember like my grandpa, and that's when one of his chores was just churning butter. He
Mm,
hated it. Churning butter or like wash day. And you think wash day isn't done in the house, it's done out on the porch. And
right.
it doesn't matter what the weather is, you're doing the laundry out on the porch. And he
Yeah.
had to turn the wheel to where ring because it was a ringer washer, and so that's how you got most of the water out. And he said he hated that job too. So just jobs like that they had.
Yeah.
And he goes, how do you make them fun? It's just something you do though.
Right. Right. Well,
But
there weren't a lot of distractions. There weren't,
mm,
there wasn't Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all that
good point.
stuff. Otherwise they'd be posting pictures of
Yes.
them churning the butter and stuff. Selfies
That's
like
true.
I'm
That's
churning the
true.
butter.
Yeah.
So funny.
True.
I'm glad you
But
preserved this part of America for sure,
mhm. Oh,
because
thank
it
you.
is
Yes.
an important part of history that a lot of people have forgotten about. A
Hmm.
lot of people still live on one level or another. I mean, everything's a little more
Hmm.
industrialized now.
Sure.
We have machinery and equipment that
Right.
makes life a lot easier. We don't have to churn our own butter by hand.
Right.
But you
That's
have
true.
you've preserved your family's legacy and your family's history
Hmm.
as well as you
Yep.
know, it was a shared experience for a lot of people for many years, for many, you know,
Yeah.
decades or a century, I'd say probably.
Right. Well, and what's fun about these books too, you don't stop to think that what they went through, like the first time they saw an automobile or
Yeah.
rode in an automobile, or
Yeah.
like the automobile scared the horses, and so there's a story in that about horses took how they took off, things like that, or just elections, how they ran elections versus today. Because one cute little story, of course, my great grandma, she did not want any children, but at least if she had children, she did like Blanche, her daughter. But when she had her son, Ralph, she did not like him. She did not want him. And Blanche didn't want him either. In fact, when she came home, because of course back then, no one knew you were in the motherly way. You didn't talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
Kids didn't know where babies came from, that kind of thing. You hid that. So anyway, so when Blanche came home, they go, "Oh, here's your baby brother," and she goes, "What?" And she's like, "Baby brother." Well, I don't want a baby brother. Can't God take him back? And they're like, no. And then she goes, well, then feed him to the pigs, because she didn't want him. And it's sad, but his mom didn't want him either. And she actually then, because she will tell me how she did not want more kids, let alone a boy. And she never knew if she could learn to love him. And the thing was, she actually dressed him as a girl until he was like 3 years old.
Wow.
And so there's a picture in one of the books about how this little skirt that he had, because
Amazing.
she had. And so finally, my grandpa said, "Look, he's 3 years old. You've got to start putting the boy in pants." But before that, it was kind of funny.
That is
He
funny.
had a little hat that he had to wear. So he had this hat, and his dad had taught him how to say hurrah for McKinley, because McKinley was running for president then.
Right.
So of course, somehow in church, when his mother told him to take his hat off, he took it off and he twirled it around and said, "Hurrah for McKinley." And so my grandma's just devastated about, what are you doing in church? You don't do that kind of thing. Because
That's
that was the
great.
thing too. A lot of people, they had their faith and they went to church, but you were strict with the kids in church. You didn't bring, like you say, cell phones or any tablets to church with you. You sat there
Yeah.
and you were quiet.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you've got so many great stories. Tell us again the names of the books.
The books are Rate, The
Mhm.
Lad Called Rate, The Mischief Maker, and Forever a Farmer.
Awesome. And they're available on Amazon and also on the website rizdana.com as well, correct?
Well, it's actually RLS, which are my
Ah,
initials from when I was wedding. So RLSDonna.com. Yes, they can get them there, or there's like,
rlsdonna.com. Okay, great.
yes.
Well, your mom's looking down at heaven from heaven. Very proud of
Yeah.
you for getting the word out
Yeah.
there about these books. They're a wonderful series of books that will transport you back to a different time, a better time in many
Oh, yeah.
ways. And it's a part of Americana you don't
Mhm.
want to not know about. Thank you so much
Oh,
for
yeah.
joining us here today on Spotlight, Ramona.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time.
Mhm.
Until next time on Spotlight.